the third part of becoming a tzaddik. And basically, as we mentioned, that the zehirut is, how do I stop doing the things that I know I want to stop? How do I do it? And why don't I stop doing the things that I want to stop, right? There's a lot of things that I'm doing in my life. I know they're wrong, and I do it. So Zehirut helps you get the tools to stop doing the things that you don't want to be doing, and and they're obvious to you, and you want to get rid of them, and you want to change them. How do you change it? Like we said, one thing is you have to have time. Time is the most important thing here. You have to have time to think. You have time to plan, time to review. You have to create time. And the Yetzer Hara wants to put you in a crisis that you're always in an emergency. It's a war. It's a matter of life and death. It's pikuach nefesh. All these excuses why you have to make a living. You don't have time. And anyway, Zeirut is... So we dealt with Zeirut. Mm-hmm. That was the first part. How do I get rid of those... Like in the field, how do I get rid of the boulders? I can't plant anything if there's big boulders. So I got rid of the boulders. And then zrizut. We said there's two parts on one coin. You can't just be zehirut, careful not to do anything wrong. Because the question is, well, are you doing anything right? So, right, it's not enough to just not do wrong. You have to also do right. God put you in the world to make things happen. And so basically, like we said, a fish to be kosher has to have scales and fins. The scales is the protection, is the armor, and the fins are the movement and the dynamic and the excitement and the love of God. And then, as we mentioned, one of the things for zehirut, the only way to become cautious and careful and paying attention and not let your life be led by habits, the only way to do that is by... What did we say for Zeirut? What did we say?
Learning Torah.
Cheshbon nefesh. You're right. Okay. Learning Torah, which is obviously that's like the doctor gives you the medicine. The big. He says to you, do exercise, eat healthy, and sleep well. That's like the learning Torah. That's very nice, but you also need antibiotics. You need the medication that deals with exactly your problem, your issue, and that's what we're learning here to actually, and what do you do? Cheshbon nefesh, we said, making time to review, what are you doing good, what are you doing bad, how could you make the good better, how could you make the bad go away, what's the game plan? With basically tshuva is thinking, tshuva has 4 parts according to the Rambam. Part number 1 is to admit, say it in words. You don't have to say it to somebody, but you have to say it in words. You have to put it in the world. I did this wrong. Then you have to feel bad. Then you have to, what we said, charata, vidui, kabbalah latid, ve'azivat achet. You have to stop doing the thing you're doing. You have to plan for the future, a game plan that it won't happen again, and
not to put oneself in a situation where one
exactly. So basically, that's tshuva. So now we're in nekiyut. What is nekiyut? Nekiyut is, like we said, cheshbon nefesh. We focus on the good. I take the good. I just say, what am I doing good and what am I doing bad? Now, how to make the good better? So we first dealt with the field. We wanted to get rid of the big boulders. Now that we got the excitement and the passion of zrizut, of passion, excitement for God, now we need to ask the question, how do I take out the smaller stones? In other words, there are a lot of things in life that are accepted by society. Things that we are sure that they are 100% kosher. And when we look into it, we discover things that we did not know. That actually, these things that I thought are so obvious that they're okay, are actually wrong. And why? Why did we get confused? Because there's something called bribery.
Okay.
Many reasons. One is bribery, right? If I bribe the judge, He thinks that he's saying, you are correct, but he has no idea that he is subconsciously making a decision based on the bribery, the money that was given. The bribery is actually leaning his decision to making a decision based on a not truth of what really needs to be said. But there's many things in life that are very, very important, are very needed. And anything that is something that is a matter of life and death, right? You need to eat. You need to have money. You need to bring children into the world. All these things are very powerful needs, and therefore they can go overboard, and you can justify excuses why it's okay, because it's such an important topic. And this is what we said, that so the Ramchal now is going through a list. This is basically, this chapter is learning halacha, but it's learning halacha on issues between your business relationships or your social relationships, and then learning halacha with midot, with your character, things that are expected from every Jew, but we don't know it. We make a mistake. So the first thing we talked about last week was money. We're not talking about stealing, going into a bank and robbing the bank. We spoke about it last week. The Torah has so many different words for stealing, so many words that it's not just what we know is famous that you can't do. You can't go and rob a bank or steal. There's all kinds of ways that we spoke about it in length last week. We're not going to go back into it. Right? Now, this week, we're going to start. The Ramchal brought the Gemara that says, Rubam bagezel, miutam ba'ay arayot, vekulam be'avak lashon hara. So the Gemara says, everybody, right, the Gemara says in Bava Batra that everybody, in one way or another, steals, unfortunately. We're in chapter 11. We're talking, Shom, give me the book, so I'll tell you where we are. Nedaber min arayot.
I am not sure as well.
Here. So here. Nedaber min arayot, the page is 63, and the third paragraph, right there. The third part.
Thanks.
So the Gemara says that everybody, almost everybody, Rubam, most people steal. Less than that, people do what's called, relations between men and women mess up. Less than the financial, but that's the second one. And the third one is kulam be'avak. Everybody uses their words in the wrong way, what we call lashon hara, saying things that havak lashon hara, that could lead to something, could harm somebody. We're not careful with our speech. So these are very subtle. I know what's your name? Shushan. You're jumping into the heart of the book, the 11th chapter. Right. We're already in the 11th chapter. So this is like a very high level, and I hope we don't scare you out of the class. Someone told me once he walked into Messilat Yesharim class in the middle of and he I'll never learn that book again, and I'll have nothing to do with it, because there's a gradual build up for the class, and and the Ramchal is called Messilat Yesharim. The word Mesilah means a track. It's a program. And you don't start lifting, the big weights. When you go to the gym, you start with the small weights and you lift up. So obviously, if you came in, it's good to hear. I hope you get something out of it. I hope we don't scare you away forever. But basically,
usually I do that this year. That's why
no problem. We're happy you're here. Just it's important things, but like I said, this is advanced levels. So what we're learning in this chapter is things that everybody are sure that is okay, But really, it's wrong. And now we're going to talk about it. ואתה נדבר מן האריות, שגם הם חמורים, והם משנים מדרגה לגזל. Now we're going to talk about relations between men and women. There's two different opinions how you say it. Chamurim, that are very like serious, or chamudim, which people have like a desire for. And we said anything that has a desire for has a danger of being used in the wrong direction. And therefore you have to be on guard, and you have to be aware, and you have to be conscious. So we said it's less than the financial thing. People doing not honest financial dealings, unfortunately, because people feel it's a matter of like life and death. It's an emergency. It's a matter of like survival. And when a person's in a state of survival, everything is permitted. And we have to tell ourselves, like we said in the last chapter, in the last class, you have to silence those war bells. Those war bells that are telling you it's an emergency, it's a crisis, you don't have time for anything, this is a matter of life and death, you're gonna starve to death, right? You have to silence those war bells and tell yourself, I don't have to steal, I can take time to learn Torah. What a revelation. The same God that told me to work and is in charge of my success, of what's going to be in work, is also the one that said learn Torah and pray. So do you think that the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing? Do you think that like the God who said to you, that's what like when you realize Hashem Echad, God is one. So I can actually learn Torah, and it's not going to make me lose my livelihood. I'm not going to lose my financials, because the financials from Hashem. It's the same God. So therefore you can be relaxed. It's a matter of faith in God. Like we talked in the last class, you don't need to steal. You just need to have faith in God. Strengthen your bitachon in Hashem. Oh, your trust in God, so that you can be honest and you'll be okay. Do you trust God that He's actually the one that's like taking care of your finances? If He is, then relax. You have time to learn Torah, and you have time, and you can do it honest. There are many honest business people who made a lot of money without stealing. It's rare, but there are. Number 2. So we're talking now arayot. Okay? We're not, so we said this is number 2. The worst is financials. We're saying we're not talking about what is more serious, because the reason why he started with the Gemara talks about first the financial thing, because you could have a guy who could be a complete corrupt person who makes his money from gambling or from exploiting women or from all kinds of different things, but he's very respected. He gives money and he has his name on buildings and people give him a lot of respect. So unfortunately, when it comes to financial misconduction or misconduct,
Yeah.
so people still respect and status-wise you're okay. When it comes to what we call sexual immoral behavior, people look down on it, so it's kind of the second level down. But here we're talking on a more refined level. What are we talking about? And that's what we're trying to do in this chapter. This book is not a book of do this, don't do that. It's not a book of do a good action. It's a book of how do I create a good person. Not a person who does good, a person who is good. This is who you are. You become a good person. We're talking about how do I clean myself out? How do I clean myself out so that I am clean? Where it's not a struggle and a battle all the time not to do that negative thing. But I don't want it. I'm not interested in it. It doesn't pull me. So Misha, if you want to clean yourself out, you're going to have to do a lot of work. This is hard. This is like, it's not a small amount of work. And by the way, I just heard this thing my rabbi wrote, like Rav Tao, he did research about the 12-step program, and he said, it's not good. Of course, if you have no other choice, there's nothing else, and that's all there is. And what?
What 12-step?
What is it?
Yeah.
It's a program for people that are addicted to any type of addiction. It's very famous. It's 12-step, and he says the focus of that system is based on you are weak. It comes from a Christian philosophy of despair. You have no ability. You're an addict. You will be an addict your whole life, and you are and you are weak and you are helpless. And the Torah is all about gvura. You have strength and you can do it and you have to keep fighting. And your whole life you'll be struggling, and that is the way you'll serve God. And don't. It's sort of like the difference between tshuva from yira and tshuva from ahava. A doctor who did terrible things and does tshuva. If he did tshuva from yira, he would say, "I'm not being a doctor anymore. I did terrible things. I did not do things right. I'm not going to be a doctor anymore. Goodbye." But a tshuva from ahava is, now I'm going to be a great doctor. Now I'm going to do it positively, right? So anyway, if you don't know about that system, this is the 12-step program, the Jewish 12-step program. The 12 steps of the Ramchal of becoming a tzaddik are the 12 chapters. That's if you take the 12 chapters of the Ramchal, you became a tzaddik. This is the program, the Jewish program. Like we said, we believe in your ability to. You are strong, and you can do it, and you have the ability. So we said, but it's a lot of work. And like the first book we talked about, Chavat Levavot is the first book of personal growth, what we call Tikkun Midot. He says, if you're not willing to take the bitter pill of difficulty, don't even start working on your character. It's hard work. It's a battle. It's a challenge. It doesn't mean the medication has to be bad, but you have to be willing to take that it may be difficult, right? So here we're talking about things that are accepted in society, and everyone thinks it's okay. And what's wrong with it? What's the problem, right? If you want to clean yourself out, and that's what we're talking about here, you have to do a lot of work. Elakol hakarov elav. So, the Torah, when it talks about relations between men and women, what does it say? It doesn't say don't do it. Don't have relations with that you're not allowed to do. It says lo tikrav, don't get close. Right? Lo tikrav legalot erva. Don't get close. Right? They say, what's the difference between a wise person and a smart person? A wise person knows how to get out of a difficult situation. A smart person knows how to not get into it. It says about Yaakov that he says to his children, I'm giving you Shechem, that I got becharbi u bekashti, that I conquered with my sword and with my spear. But that doesn't make sense. When a battle comes, first you use the spear, and then you go in with the sword. So why does he say with my sword and with my spear? Say with my spears and with my sword. The answer is he's talking about the inner battle. The first thing we got to do is get the negativity out of us, and then we have to do upkeep to keep it away. Because once we're facing the enemy face to face, the chances of success are very small. Right? Don't put yourself into a situation that you cannot handle. I remember once I was talking to a kid. He was trying to convince me to give my son a smartphone, and I was saying, why would I want to put him in such a challenge, to have to deal with such a difficulty? And the guy said, what do you mean? You have to teach your son to be able to deal with the difficulties of life. Like these kids these days, they have very good explanations. You have to teach your kid to deal with the challenge. Like that's not dealing with the challenge. That's suicide. That's like throwing him into the impossible battle. You can give a phone with it has to have a block on it, all kinds of other things. So the Torah says lo tikrevu. So the Torah says, don't say, okay, I know I'm not allowed to sleep with women that are not married to, or a woman I'm not married to, but why not hold her? Or I could, hug her. What's wrong with that? In other words, or I can kiss her. What's the big, we're not doing the act, right? People try to make distinctions between aesthetics and what's called like erotics, right? Like I'm looking at a picture of a naked woman. That's that's aesthetics. Or they have like if you want to learn in the art in a school, so they bring actually naked women to come while you can paint it. It's aesthetics, and they try to make these like distinctions, and like just you can't do that. The act you can't do, but everything else is okay. And the facts are that in the what's called in Hebrew mivchan hatotzah, the actual like you look on the ground, people don't understand like how does this happen? How are all these things happening? And the answer is because you have to create. The Torah creates these borders. And there's once a story of in it was the Ben Ish Chai was in Iraq, and someone came to the Sultan of Iraq and said, the Jews they have all these laws that they do and they're going against you. So he put out a decree: Jews cannot keep any of their mitzvot. So the Ben Ish Chai asked to meet with the king, Sultan, and he said, you see, can we take a walk in your new castle that's being built? Sure. They're walking up the castle and they're just talking about random things. As they come up to the top of the castle, there was a balcony that was not yet finished, and there was no balcony. And he said, come, let's just walk out on the balcony. The king walked a little bit and said, that's it. He said, oh, okay. I just wanted to look on the balcony. Can I meet with you a week later? Sure. A week later, they go for the same walk, go up to the same balcony, and the balcony was already finished. They made the how do you say the ma'akeh? How do you say that?
Railing?
The rail. They made the railing. They walked the same place. They walked all the way up to the end. And the Ben Ish Chai said to the king, do you understand now what I wanted to say to you? What? All these things that we're not allowed to do is order to bring us actually to be able to do more. To be able to get closer. All the halachas, that all the laws that we have, right? We say, oh, you religious people, you hate women because you tell them they have to dress, certain ways and they have to wear all these things because you're anti-women. It's the opposite. Because we respect women so much, we want to value them as their personality, their character, their as a human being, and not as a body, as an object or a right. It all comes out of, it's the most respect for women. All these laws. So number one, it says people may think, okay, you're not allowed to do the act, but everything else is okay. And trying to make these distinctions, they don't work, because, like I said, it's a slippery slope. It's very fine lines of where you can suddenly discover yourself in places you don't want to be. And the Torah, which knows the human condition, tells you what to do in order to protect yourself and others. Yes.
Yes, I've heard this liberal kind of argument to do everything but. That does stem from the fact, though, right, that at some core written level, or maybe it's a decree from Chazal, that the actual, of course, there's permutations to not get near, but isn't the actual big issue would be thus penetrative acts?
No, but that's what we're saying. That's what we're saying. The Torah says these words: "Lo tikrevu legalot erva." The Torah itself, it's not like a thing that's what we're saying. Nikiyut, this chapter, is things that people think are extra things, or the rabbis to protect us. And here he's saying, no, this is actually the law. In other words, if you do these things that we're talking about now, you are not someone that is going above the expected. You're doing what is expected from a Jew. And that's what the Ramchal is saying is the pshat in the Torah. Right? And it's a tough one, because we said these are a list of things that are accepted in society.
So this would be a negative commandment you're transgressing.
Yes. In other words, these are things that are 100% wrong. You're not going above the letter of the law if you are keeping. That's this whole chapter is about. He gives us a whole list of things that people are sure is okay, but really it's not. Right? So that's what we're saying. So Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu. So where do we learn it from the Torah? Like you asked. Remind me your name again. Sorry.
It's David.
David.
Well, the argument I've heard from them is, well, it's not karet until I'm penetrating, which, as far as I understand, that is true, but that doesn't mean they're not transgressing the negative. Well, nonetheless.
You're right, but like we said, the fine line between not, like you said, is very, very fine. And people find themselves, how did I get here? And the answer is the heat in your car didn't go up to the red in a second. There was a what's called a slow what?
It's a good method.
Revving.
A slow
Revolutions per minute.
evolution of where it was going there. And it's not that, and there's so many things that you can do to not get to that red in your car motor when already it's destroyed and you blew your car. Right? So Amal Kadosh Baruch Hu. So where do we learn this from? So the Ramchal is saying, I just now said to you, the Torah says don't get close, but maybe it's just like you said, maybe the rabbis are just saying that because they are weak and they think that that it's like they need to like protect us from things because they don't know how to be. Amal Kadosh Baruch Hu. Where do we learn it from? Keshem she'im nadar nazir shelo lishtot yain asur le'echol anavim lachim v'yeveshim u'misrat anavim v'mishrat anavim v'kol hayotze migefen hayayin. The Torah was given to very wise people. The Jewish nation is called Mi Am Chacham V'Navan. Who is a nation that is wise, and who is a nation that is smart, and therefore, if the Torah would give every single example, then the Torah would be 50 million miles long. So smart people, I give you the rule, I give you an example, and then apply that example, that formula, apply it to everything else in life. The same way, same way I say you can't cook a lamb in the milk of its mother. So a lamb or a cow or like all the other animals. I don't have to give every single example. So the Torah gives us one example. And why was this example chosen? The example of a person who becomes a Nazir. In other words, the highest holy people in our nation are called Kohanim. Right? They're born holy, their father was holy, and they don't have to do anything, and they're holy people. They're born holy. But what happens if I want to dedicate my life to God, I want to be the holiest person, and I also want to be like on a very, very, like just give my life to God and have nothing else. So what's the halacha? You can become a Nazir. It's not recommended, it's difficult, but there's certain things you have to do, and one of the things is you don't drink wine. Why is this example? And the Torah says that a Nazir is not allowed to drink. The Torah explicitly explains he's not allowed to drink wine. He's not allowed to eat grapes. He's not allowed to eat raisins. He's not allowed to drink vinegar. He's not allowed to drink water that had grapes in it. The Torah goes through each example. The question is, what's the connection to grapes? Now, why the Torah says, why does a person become a Nazir? Is that if a person happened to be in the Beit HaMikdash and he saw at that moment a woman comes in to bring the sacrifice of sotah. It says, a person who sees this, should say to himself, in other words, this woman, what is a sotah? The Torah talks about the halacha about a woman who cheats on her husband, or we're not sure, she definitely did something wrong. She locked herself in a room with a man. There was 2 witnesses. She was warned not to do it, but there's no ways to prove that they actually had relations. Nobody saw. But the husband is so jealous, he cannot even be with his wife. So they used to bring this woman to the temple. She would drink this water that had earth from the temple, from the ground of the temple, the Mizbeach, and God's name written on a piece of parchment, and she would drink it. If she did the act, she would explode. If she didn't do it, she would have a child. But a person who experienced this woman coming and sees this woman says, you should stay away from wine. Become a Nazir. Why? Because wine is what brought that woman to get to that situation with that man. She was drinking with him, joking around, drunk, and then they were in the room together, and who knows what happened. She might not even know what happened. So, but then you'd ask yourself a question, okay, she drank wine, why shouldn't she eat grapes? Grapes has nothing to do with alcohol. Has nothing to do with, you can eat 15 million grapes and you will not get drunk. The answer is, like we said, Af isha she'ena shelcha. A woman that is not yours, you are not allowed to touch her whatsoever. V'kol mi shenogea be'isha she'ena shelo mevi mita le'atzmo. And if you touch a woman that's not yours, you're bringing death to yourself. Not only are you not allowed to touch a woman, you're not allowed to have a friendship with a woman who is not your wife. Now that's tough, right? It's tough. There was lots of stories. It just happened recently with a young girl. She did a Kiddush Hashem like no one else, where she did not shake the hand of Biden. He was there with his hand out, and she didn't shake his hand.
It just happened?
Just happened. Her name was, and she wasn't even that religious. She just, like, on that issue, she was very important for her to stand. And she was like something she took on herself. She doesn't touch men, even though she sings before men, but she doesn't touch men. And and she did a Kiddush Hashem. But there's lots of stories of
friendships are, if we actually think about it, are utterly pointless. Like, you don't actually benefit from it, and you can put yourself at risk. Say you're out or whatever, she's not yours. If you really think about it.
In the secular
Just
world,
limitations.
you're expected to have just friendships. And the truth is, if God didn't say not to, we would definitely want to. In other words, the Rambam says, don't say, I don't want to have relations with single women. But say, I want to. But God commanded me not to. In other words, keep yourself having the desire, which is healthy. But I'm not doing it because God said not to. When we have two clashing values, we have to make a choice. Which one is going to overtake? So we have two clashing values. Friendship with a woman, which would be really nice, but modesty. So which one overrides? Modesty overrides. And therefore, you're not allowed to have a friendship with a woman who is not your wife, or your mother, or your sister, or grandmother, or that's just those are the laws. Again, these are things that people don't know, and they're not aware of, and it's very hard for people to do. But that's the reality. Ve'abet ma nifleu divrei ha'mamar hazeh. How wonderful was this Gemara? Ki imshil ta'isur hazeh nazir. It gave us the example of the nazir. She'af al pi she'ikar. Right. The only thing he's really not allowed to do is drink wine. He makes a vow that he's not allowed to drink wine. But the Torah says explicitly he's not allowed anything that shayachut has any connection to wine. And this is the prototype, or would you say prototype, or the example, or the formula shelimdato hachamim. The rabbis learned from here, from this halacha. They learned how do they make, like you said, siyag? How do they make borders and boundaries for all the other laws? Right? You're not allowed to light fire on Shabbos? No, you're not allowed to even move the candle. You're not allowed to move the candle from place to place. What do you mean? I'm not lighting it. I'm just you're not allowed to put it out. Don't put it out. Don't touch it. Right? And they learned from everything. Okay, they learned all of the right. But usually, what we call siyag, what we call a border, is called the Rabbanan. Here we have a Torah example of things that are don't do this because it might lead to this, and it's the Oraita. Right? Just shows you that actually whatever the rabbi said is on the level of the Oraita. You're right, we have to make a distinction, but it's actually called the Oraita. Okay? So don't give a hand to the woman, because then you'll give a hug, and then next thing will lead to the next. So what we're trying to say is even just the first part, the first step of giving the hand is already the thing wrong, right? Like, and also what it says in the first Tehillim, אשרי האיש אשר לא הלך בעצת רשעים ובדרך חטאים לא עמד ובמושב לשים לא ישב. King David says, blessed is the person that did not stand in the place אשר בדרך חטאים, places where people are doing things wrong. He didn't stand, right? ובמושב לשים לא ישב, right? No, halach, sorry. Halach, first one's halach. Halach b'tzat rashayim, dechatim lo amad. So, way it starts is a person you're walking down the street and you see something interesting. And then you see like you happen to be going on YouTube and there's like a reel. It's a 10-second little video. Oh, what is that? And then you find yourself not just walking by, but actually standing. 1 hour, 2 hours, 15-second video turned into 2-3 hours. And then yashav, and of what kind of content? And then you end up sitting there in that place and saying to yourself, how did I get here? Right? So the Torah gives an example of Nazir, where it goes through each prohibition that usually we don't see this. Usually we just see like we said, don't do the act. Here the Torah says, don't do the act, and don't do this that may lead to the act that's connected to it, that's similar. Like the Rambam says, "Hitrachek min hachiur min hadomeh lo." Stay away from the negativity and the things that are similar, from things that are disgusting and things that are similar, or close to it, right? Okay. Keep on going. Now, נמצא שעשתה תורה במצווה הזו של נזיר, מה שעשו החכמים שעשו. So from here the rabbis learned all of what the rabbis should make borders. Don't say, oh, it's the Rabbanan. No, it's only what the rabbis say. It's not so serious. No. This is what God wanted, right? So why didn't the Torah say it? We said, because the Torah can't be so long. וכשאסור לנו אחד מהאיסורים, ילמדו סתום מפורש לאסור הקרוב לו. Stay away from the things that are close to it, right? Like we said, the Torah says, what happens when a cow falls into a pit? Who has to pay for it? Your pit. But what if a camel falls into it? Obviously, I said a cow, but it means a camel. It means it means a sheep, right? You're not an idiot. And this is what the rabbi said, stay away from anything or it's close to it with all of your senses. The 5 senses. And the Ramchal is going to go through each one. You have to keep your senses clean. You have 5 senses, which means action, maaseh, re'iyah, seeing, dibur, talking, shmiyah, hearing, Vafilu machshava. Even your thoughts. What do you mean I have control of my thoughts? Yes. You have control of your thoughts. You can't think more than one thought at one time. So if you're having negative thoughts, think positive thoughts. You can't think 2 different things. So start thinking Torah, right? Choose what you're going to think. There's once a story of a patient came to a psychiatrist, middle of the night screaming, I need your help, banging on the door. No answer. The psychiatrist looks out the window, sees him, closes the door, goes to sleep. And the guy's banging all night. In the morning, he comes to the clinic and he says, why didn't you help me? I needed your help. Why didn't you answer me? I did answer you. But how did you answer me? I answered you. I showed you that these thoughts or these things can be banging down on your door, and you can see it, acknowledge it's there, and close the window and move on with your life. You have the power to decide what you want to react to and what you don't. That was my answer. I did answer you. Okay? So here, we're talking, the Torah tells us, the rabbis told us, that your 5 senses have to be clean. And he says, and I'll explain each one, right? B'maseh, how do I know? that the action is wrong, right? We're not talking about the action of actually having relations, but how do I know the action of touching, hugging, kissing? How do I know all these things are also unaccepted, right? It's just friendship. It's just, give a hand, we shake hands, right? And if somebody would offer you something not kosher, would you take it because you don't want to make them feel bad? I think there's a difference when it comes to someone who really has no idea. And they're so far from it and they have no clue. They never heard of anything that has to do with like a Jew and they have no concept, right? Okay, maybe that's different. But if a person understands, they understand and they should respect your values, right? And the same thing, right? Or if someone's going to tell you Lashon Hara, we'll go on that later. Lashon Hara is another one of those things that everyone thinks are okay, but really they're not. So that's what we said. He says we don't have to talk too much about the idea of action, of touching, because we mentioned it and already mentioned that we talked about till now. Okay? Bereya. But seeing is something that, yes, how do I know? I remember somebody many, many years ago, a shocking story. Somebody many, many years ago told me, a married man, you can look at the menu, but you can't order. That person ended up raping young girls. Just to give you an example, someone with that philosophy of you're allowed to look, but you're not allowed to do the act. Yad, and what does the rabbi say? The Gemara says, Yad leyad lo yinakera. That a person who is going to the store and purposely counting to the woman so he can, look at her, and 1, 2, 3. How long does this take you? Because he wants to look at the seller. So yad liyad, this is a terrible thing, right? And again, these are things that people may do. They may not be aware of it. We said it's a very powerful desire. The desire of creating life. You are creator. You're like the creator. You bring children to the world. What a powerful possibility that we are partners with God in creating. A person that is in a state of creation, feels alive, feels important, is important. So therefore, like we said, there's 2 ways to get strong. You want to work out? 2 ways to do it. Take steroids or work out a whole year. You'll both get to the same result. One is unacceptable. One is wrong, will destroy you, is unhealthy for you. And the other one is healthy and you got it, but it took effort, it took work. A person could easily come to feel that he's creating, but it's completely imaginary feeling of creation, and it's negative, right? Amru, and it says, why did they have to, in the generation of Midian, why did we have to really do a big tshuva? Is because Zanu and Nehemin Arva. In the war, women used to come in war to seduce the men. The part of the battle was the women would actually dress up with their finest clothing and makeup and to try to seduce the men. And unfortunately, the men did fault for this, and we paid a big price. Right? And we see more examples of, here we're giving examples of seeing. Why does the Torah, when it says that when we brought to the temple, we brought all the jewelry that we conquered, but it brought, the Torah says, and they brought earrings and they brought rings, and they bought it says kumaz and all these different type of jewelry that was created for seduction. Why did it bring in the same list? To tell you, like we said, that if you're looking at a woman in that way, there's no difference whether you're looking at her, if you're looking at her in a animalistic way, doesn't matter where you're looking, it's wrong, right? ואמרו ונשמרתם מכל דבר רע, שלא יסתכל אדם באישה נאה אפילו פנויה. You should not look at a woman even if she's single. If you're going to marry her and you're going on a date, that's something else. But you should really protect all of your senses, your eyes, your actions, your eyes. Here we're talking about seeing, which is a big thing, right? And it's wrong. These are not chumras. These are not, wow, you're going above the letter of the law. Is that you don't want, and again, it doesn't mean if you have, let's say, your teacher, you have children, and your teacher is a woman teacher. So you could talk to her for an hour and a half about your child because it's needed. But you can't talk to her for 5 minutes if it's just for the sake of flirting or, it has to have a purpose, right? And you have to be careful. You're not allowed to look. And again, you see things in the street. There's a difference between looking and seeing. Seeing, you see it. Like we said, that thought pops in your head, but you get rid of it. You see it, okay, and obviously you see it, and it's exciting or whatever it is, but you don't look. Don't start to try to understand what it means in depth. These are hard. This is hard. We mentioned Ramchal is not saying this is easy and this is right. We said v'gam lo titzach malacha lo moed. It's a lot of work. I understand, but it's possible. The Ramchal, the Chafetz Chaim has a great example, a parable that he teaches. He says a woman that was selling apples, and this person walked by and knocked over her whole booth of apples, and she's sitting there screaming, ah, ah, and some wise person walks by and says, why don't you grab as much as you can? Everyone's grabbing it, but you grab as much as you can. What do you mean? But it's mine. But you're not getting it. So Christianity came and said, come on. It's way too hard a battle. You tell me not only not to do the act, I'm not supposed to act in touching. I'm not supposed to look. I'm not supposed to right? Thoughts. Forget about it. Do whatever you want. We say no. You're going to fall. You're going to get up. You're going to fall. You're going to get up. You're a fighter. You're a battler. It's true. You may not do it perfectly, but keep fighting. Keep struggling. Stay in the battle. Okay? So, and that's what we said. Okay? And then we said, so that's what we talked about looking. Now we're talking about talking. You're not allowed to talk with a woman. What does that mean? Talking. Dibur meyutar. Talking just for the sake of talking. It has to have a reason. If she's on a committee, if you have a job, if she's at if it's something that is, I need to talk with you. I remember I started working in Tel Aviv at this place, and the secretary was like, "Hi, mommy." She's like all these neshama, all these nicely words and I said to her, "Listen, please try to keep our conversation. I don't know how you say it in English, but inyani, very to the point. If there's something you need to tell me, tell me. Don't call me mommy. Don't call me sweetheart. Don't call me sugar. Don't call me. My wife can call me that. Just tell me what you need. That has to practical things."
How'd she take that?
She was like, "Oh, that's the most beautiful thing I ever heard. You're keeping yourself for your wife." And then obviously she's like this sweet Sephardic woman, what I'm saying, but she still slipped here and there. But at least I had to gotta be very careful, right? Again, and I wouldn't say it if it was a one-time deal, but when relationships, when you're coming to work every single day, you gotta put things in in words. So when it comes to talking, we said, unfortunately, like I said, in our community, in the Dati Lomi community, they're not as good at this. Haredi world is much better. The women don't expect you to say, okay, it's one thing you say shalom. You shouldn't say shalom. How are you? Right? You say hi. How are you?
The Dati world has two spheres, the more Chazak, settler types, or Kirat Moshe, and then there's big spectrum of Dati life, which
Right.
somebody
And that's, unfortunately, in that world, there's like, concerts with men and women and shows and all kinds of this. And it's just wrong. And it's something that we need to learn from the Haredi. Beshmiyah, when it comes to hearing, kol ba'isha erva. You're not allowed to get pleasure from a voice of a woman. The Torah says, it says in Shir Hashirim, Hashmieni et kolech ki kolech harev u'marech naveh. Let me hear your voice because your voice is beautiful and so is your looks. So the looks and the voice were similar, were put together in the same pasuk. So therefore, gotta not hear women singing. I know for me, like slowly, gradually, I took on, not to hear women singing, and then not to, like, these are things that you want to try to grow with, and it's hard. And now the next thing we talked about, talking. Znut hapeh ve'ozen. You're not allowed to talk about the same way we have, like, there's words we use, in the Haredi world. They don't say I'm going Aktanim and Gdolim. I have to use the bathroom, number one, number two. You don't say these words that are dirty.
You say I go Asher Yatzah.
That's nice. I have to go say Asher Yatzah. Right? So, and where do we learn it from? He's bringing things from the Torah. V'lo yiracha erbat davar, ervat dibur. Right? The same way you have a certain part of your body that you cover because it's private. Same way, there's certain words, there's certain things that you need to cover and not say. There's a story once of Rav Kook that he went to. Actually, the whole idea of Christianity started because of this reason that it says that Yeshu, Jesus, and his rabbi were going, the Christian, right? The founder of Christianity, he was going with his rabbi, Rabbi Yeshua ben Parachia, and they came to a hotel, right? What happened? This is the Gemara Sota Daf Mem Zayin, in the Gemaras that were not censored. And they come to Israel and with his rabbi, and he went with his student, which was Yeshu Hanotzri, right? Jesus the Christian. They come into a hotel, and the rabbi says, "Wow, what a beautiful hotel." And Yeshu thought that he was talking about the woman that was standing behind the counter. And he says to the rabbi, "You call that beautiful? Her eyes are like kind of crooked a bit." And he said, "Right? That's what you thought I'm talking about? That's what you're looking at?" And he put him in cherem. You're looking at women. You're a Russia. He put him in cherem. He's like, "I have nothing to do with you. You're a corrupt person." It says he pushed him away too far. But, right? But basically the whole thing started from him looking at women. It's a serious thing. Scared him out. Right? Ve'amru, ba'avon nivlut peh. I remember when I was working on campus, everyone's swearing all these words, and it goes into your head. You could almost say it because you hear it so often. It's so there, and every other word is these like swear words. Ba'avon nivlut peh, rabot gzerot ksharot, and terrible things happen because of this. Right? So don't say like, "Oh, what's the big deal?" Speaking, it's just words. What's the big deal if I say, talk about private things publicly? Okay? And what about hearing? Afa shotek, ashomea v'shotek. And he says, if the Yetzer Hara tells you, so he says, we learn from here, shekol hachushim tzrichim liot nekiim min haznut u'min. All of your senses have to be clean from this subject of relations between men and women. And if im lachashcha adam lomar, and if a person is trying to seduce you, convince you, and say, "What's the big deal?" Shema abruk al nivul peh, listen, it's only so you shouldn't do the act, right? It's only because that might pull you to do the act. Talking about young people who are hot-blooded and they're saying these words and that will lead them to actually doing things. If you're just doing it as a joke, right? Lav miltahu, and you don't have to be worried about it, right? Sorry, no, that's af ata molo. Say to him, listen, ad kan divrei Yetzer Hara. This is not you speaking. This is the words of the Yetzer Hara that's telling you everything is okay, and that is wrong. So basically, we have to end, but that's basically what we said. Nishma d'kol devara, machshava, just last thing, in the thoughts, nishma d'kol devara, that a person shouldn't just think, I reach a certain place. Why do things happen at night sometimes when you're sleeping? It's because what you're thinking in the day. So even the thinking has to be, think positive Torah learning, no matter how far you fall or how much times you do it. The solution to it, like we said, there's Torah, there's Avodah Zarah, Gidol Hayat Shfichut Damim, right? There's three worst things that a person could do is Avodah Zarah, Gidol Hayat Shfichut Damim. On the other hand, we have the three positive things, which are Gemilut Chasadim, Avodah. Gemilut Chasadim is the opposite of murder. Avodah is the opposite of Avodah Zarah. Torah, Avodah, and the Torah is the opposite of these. If you have these powerful desires, you don't need to destroy them. You don't need to get rid of them. You just need to to how do you say? Like in Tai Chi, you take that force and you use it to grow. Okay, we're good. Ad kan. So next week we will start forbidden foods, which is another thing. We need to eat or we die. So we also need to understand in the right proportion. Thank you very much. Let us live what we preach.
Right.